In the program Kazakhstan International Vectors, International Relations, Political Views, Economic Solutions and Social Innovations. Further, you will find out that atoms for peace started moving across the planet from Kazakhstan, how radioactive substances help to detect cancer, and how many world's nuclear power plants operate with the Kazakh uranium. If you succeed in the use of nuclear physics discoveries for the benefit of the world, it will open the door to a new earthly paradise. Albert Einstein, Nobel Prize winner in physics. Nuclear medicine, that is the medicine which uses radioactive substances, exists in Kazakhstan since the 60s of the last century. Main engines in this field today are the Institute of Nuclear Physics and the Scientific and Research Institute of Oncology and Radiology. In the last one, for over half of a century, a laboratory of radionuclide diagnostics exists. We are standing at a gamma camera, which is the basic unit for the investigation of patients with different pathologies of various organs and systems. For the diagnosis, radioactive pharmaceuticals that accumulate in the organs, systems, depending on their specific features, are first being introduced to patients. Some isotopes accumulate in the thyroid gland, the others attack myocardium, the third ones liver, kidney, skeleton, etc. Here, mainly because our Institute of Oncology does primarily the diagnosis of cancer, particularly metastatic tumors. Somewhat 80% of the patients are being examined for diagnosis of bone metastases. For women, it is the breast cancer, which often metastasizes to the skeleton, and prostate cancer for men, which also further metastasizes to bones. Scintigraphy, the functional imaging method comprising administration to the body of radioactive isotopes and obtaining a two-dimensional image by determining the radiation emitted by them. Here we have a diphosphonate made to visualize the skeleton. The Institute of Nuclear Physics developed the drug. This drug, called DTPA, is for the study of kidney function. Now the Institute of Nuclear Physics is involved in the development and manufacturing of radiopharmaceuticals needed first. After calculations are being done and packaging is over, the drug is being administered intravenously to a patient. Research in the gamma camera takes an average of 30 minutes. It is absolutely safe. Radioactive substances are being excreted from the body within a few hours. It takes position for the study. One detector records the patient from the front and the other one from the back. Here you can see solitary metastases. You see in the parietal bone, here it is the sternum. These are multiple metastases. Here we have a plurality of bone metastases, but this is done from the one hand for the diagnosis, from the other hand to determine the type of treatment. It is possible that this patient will be appointed to radionuclide therapy. Semipalatinsk nuclear test site is now called the nuclear tragedy in Kazakhstan, but there was a time when the number of explosions at the largest test site of the Soviet Union came to a few dozen a year. The residents of neighboring settlements were suffering from the radiation. Olja Suleimanov has received several letters. He then was a member of the supreme power in the USSR from the military, as well as from the behalf of the inhabitants of the Semipalatinsk region, who indicated the explosions that took place unplanned. Well, they were actually scheduled, but the weather has worked unplanned, and the gas went after the explosions in the direction of residential areas, and patience was snapped, so to say. Thus, in February 1989 in Kazakhstan, the anti-nuclear movement Nevada Semipalatinsk was formed. Activities of this movement led to a reduction in the number of explosions at the Semipalatinsk test site, up to 7 out of the planned 18. In autumn 1989, explosions have been stopped at all. At the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site, at least 468 nuclear tests were made, during which were detonated at least 616 nuclear and thermonuclear devices. On August 29, 1999, under the decision of the government of the Republic of Kazakhstan, the Decree number 409 of the President of Kazakhstan, the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site was closed. The decision to give up the nuclear arsenal was one of the first taken by the head of the young republic. At that time, when the whole world was concerned about the arms race, the landfill closure was a breakthrough of Kazakhstan in the humanitarian sphere. The world community has understood the country's position, which supports only the peaceful initiatives. The movement was originated in Kazakhstan. It was our president who was the first and only issued a decree to fully close, without a moratorium, that landfill, which means it is closed forever. It was Kazakhstan, the leadership of Kazakhstan, who had the courage to be a nuclear weapon-free country with a mighty nuclear capability. This act had a great meaning for the political future of Kazakhstan and for the global nuclear power industry. The policy of peaceful atom was taken by most of countries. Nevada Semipalatinsk anti-nuclear movement still actively works with other anti-nuclear organizations of France, Russia, USA, UK and India. The overall objective of anti-nuclear movements of the world is to complete abolition of nuclear weapons and the safe use of energy for peaceful purposes. Not only to identify, but to cure. How capable is the nuclear medicine? Why the nuclear energy is the most promising future energy industry? The more develops the science, the more opportunities are there for the peaceful atom. Nuclear technology has long gone beyond the research institutes. Nuclear technologies are now being used in the production industry, medicine and agriculture. Now there is a very simple example of semiconductor devices and elements. We used to get them by chemical means. Now there is the possibility of obtaining special properties of semiconductor detectors by implanting nuclei in the composition of this substance. Thus we get new semiconductors. Preset properties of these semiconductors are of high purity, and they are significantly better than conventional ones, which are obtained by chemical technologies. These are the elements for solar cells and also components for electronics. They are durable, made of stainless steel and plastic. In agriculture, nuclear energy is being used to change the properties of plants. Now the well-known for everybody is genetically modified plants. They are obtained by using the energy, in this case nuclear energy. Use of nuclear energy can change the properties of the plant. It becomes better, so to speak, of higher protective properties against pests, and it has a very high yield. The issue of the safety of such plants for human health is still open and is now under investigation. In medicine, atomic energy has begun to be used much earlier, and the results are already there. The most important direction is the radionuclide diagnosis, which allows very accurately determining the stage of cancer. One laboratory is able to examine up to 50 people a day. All the time we go through an X-ray fluorography. Even here, in comparison with the X-ray irradiation when we do chest X-rays, diagnosis using radioactive isotopes causes significantly less harm to human health, but it gives full information about the state of health, about the beginning of the development of a disease. The problem of security in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy today is the main issue. There are unresolved questions that arise from the use of nuclear reactors, but scientists believe that over time, generating energy by means of atoms will become a conventional technology. Standard sources of energy for mankind are gradually coming to an end, and people simply have no choice. So first of all, the world needs clean energy, safe energy, so that it does not harm the environment, including those who live in that environment as a human. So the logic of nuclear power is that it is one of the most logical, effective and environmentally friendly sources. Kazakhstan has the second largest uranium reserves in the world. In the country's undergrounds, 12% of the world's uranium reserves are accumulated. The country is one of the 3 world leaders in uranium mining, along with Canada and Australia. That is, the development of nuclear energy in the world is also profitable for Kazakhstan. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, demand for uranium in the coming years will grow by leaps and bounds. IAEA by 2030 predicts a 51% growth in global energy demand. Currently, the production of natural uranium in the country is being carried out at 21 mines, the total design capacity of which is 22,000 tons per year. Ensuring security in the use of nuclear energy, that's the goal set by every corporation that uses the atom for peaceful purposes. It's not just that this energy should not be used as a weapon, but that nuclear power should be as safe in operation. To ensure nuclear safety is not so simple, is not so easy, because it assumes the logical discipline, responsibility, resource management and, of course, coordination. So you know that constant negotiations on a global level are being held, which is, I would say, focusing on what way is the best to ensure that only the peaceful use of resources, which in the course previews, are necessary for nuclear energy. All questions in the field of nuclear energy today should be resolved between countries and within the tight control of the state. This requires laws, international meetings and platforms for dialogue. So that, of course, it was a logical and, I would say, the global control under the auspices of the UN, the IAEA has been created, which, as you know, in principle, basically solves all problems connected with the peaceful use of nuclear power, energy and all of these resources. The world recognizes the achievements of Kazakhstan related to the closure of the largest nuclear test site in Semipalatinsk. The country's position is respectful at the world arena. Kazakhstan's initiatives are supported by the international community. The idea of the Universal Declaration was stated for the first time by the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, in 2010 in Washington, D.C. during the first Nuclear Security Summit. Then, on September the 28th, in his speech at the anniversary 70th session of the UN General Assembly, Kazakh leader called to make the construction of a world without nuclear weapons the main goal of humanity in the 21st century, and emphasized the need for the adoption of the Universal Declaration. The Universal Declaration on the Construction of a World Free of Nuclear Weapons was approved by the United Nations in December 2015. Co-authors of the appropriate resolution are 35 states representing different continents and regional groups. This declaration calls upon the world free from nuclear weapons, and it contains a small list of the necessary measures. Among them, the principle is the total elimination of nuclear weapons as the only absolute guarantee against their use or threat of use. However, the declaration calls for the adoption of a multilateral and legally binding instrument on the complete elimination of nuclear weapons. The majority of the isotopes used in nuclear medicine of Kazakhstan today are released directly in the country. For instance, gamma emitters are used for diagnosis. Further will be developed also the isotopes which are used for treatment. Samarium-153 is a domestic product, which we will use later this year at the end of a year. We first carried out experimental tests on rats, and now we have to conduct experiments on people. This is not a test which is dangerous, simply a repetition of the experience of the world therapy. Now I prepare a drawing of this room to find out if we can spend a radionuclide therapy. Diagnosis we are able to conduct. We have received this permission long ago. Here diagnostic tests are being performed. For the therapy now it is also necessary to obtain official authorization. After bone metastases are spread, especially when they are multiple, previously it was thought to be incurable without a method of treatment. And now, due to radionuclide therapy, the pain of patient in the bones is removed and the life is extended too. This gives another term to the patient to live a little longer and qualitatively.
Жить качественно.